Get on the ground! Now! Stop resisting!
I am not resisting. My hands are visible.
Hands behind your back! Get down!
Officer, I'm 64 years old. I have metal pins in my knee. I cannot get on the ground.
Last warning! Get down or I will put you down!
You're making a serious mistake and your camera is recording it.
Sir, get on the ground. Do it now. Stop resisting. The scream tore through the quiet hum of the neighborhood, shattering the peace of a sunny Saturday. I am not resisting. I am standing still. My hands are visible. The deep, steady voice replied. You are making a grave error in judgment, son. I said, get down, hands behind your back. Officer, I am a 64-year-old retired Marine colonel. I have 2 metal pins in my left knee. I cannot physically get on the ground, and I have no reason to. Last warning, get down, or I will put you down. The officer, a young man with high and tight hair and eyes wide with an adrenaline-fueled panic, didn't seem to hear the words coming from the older man. He only saw non-compliance. He only saw a threat. He didn't see the gardening shears lying harmlessly in the dirt 3 feet away. He didn't see the bewildered neighbors stepping out onto their porches. And Officer Kyle Braden certainly had no idea that the man he was about to tackle into the mulch of the community garden was Colonel Marcus Thorne, a man who had led battalions in Desert Storm, a man who sat on the city's Civilian Oversight Board, and a man who had dedicated his retirement to beautifying this very neighborhood. But Braden didn't pause to think. He lunged. The impact was sickening. A heavy thud of bodies hitting the earth, followed by a sharp exhale of pain from the older man. Stop fighting! Stop fighting! Braden screamed, pressing his knee into the small of Marcus's back, grinding the veteran's face into the soil he had been tending just moments before. I am not fighting! Marcus wheezed, the wind knocked out of him, grit filling his mouth. You are violating my rights. But the handcuffs came out, the metal ratcheting tight against wrists that had once signed orders sending thousands of men into battle. Before we unravel this absolutely infuriating incident that cost the taxpayers of this city over $2 million, I need you to do something for me. Go down to the comments right now and tell me, do you think experience and age should command respect? Or does a badge give someone the right to ignore common sense? If you believe in accountability for those who wear the uniform, hit that subscribe button. This story is going to make your blood boil, and you need to see how it ends. Marcus Thorne was not a man who sought conflict. At 64, he carried himself with the quiet, upright dignity of a man who had nothing left to prove to anyone. His retirement from the Marine Corps after 30 years of service had been honorable, decorated with a Silver Star and 2 Purple Hearts. He didn't wear his rank on his sleeve. He wore it in his posture, in the precise way he spoke, and in the meticulous care he took with everything he did. That Saturday morning had started like any other during the planting season. The sun was high and bright, casting long shadows over the rows of raised beds in the East Side Community Garden. This plot of land had been an abandoned, trash-filled lot 5 years ago, until Marcus Thorne took it over. He had cleared the debris, built the planter boxes with his own hands, and organized the neighborhood elders to plant vegetables and flowers. It was his sanctuary. He was dressed in his gardening clothes, faded khaki work pants, a checked button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and a wide-brimmed straw hat to shield his eyes. He was deadheading the peace roses near the entrance, his pride and joy when the patrol car rolled up slowly. It was a black and white SUV, the city's standard issue. Marcus noted it but didn't stop his work. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was on public property he had a permit to manage. He heard the car door slam, a sound he usually associated with trouble, but he kept his attention on the roses. Snipping a withered bloom, he placed it gently in his waste bucket. Then came the voice. Hey, you step away from the bushes. Marcus turned slowly, pivoting on his good leg. He saw the officer approaching. Young, maybe 28 or 29, hand hovering near his holster, posture tense. Officer Kyle Braden was responding to a call that was as vague as it was dangerous, suspicious male possibly trespassing at the vacant lot. The dispatch hadn't mentioned a community garden. It hadn't mentioned a gardener, just a vacant lot. Braden, unfamiliar with this specific sector and eager to make an impression, saw a black man with a tool in his hand and immediately assumed the worst. "Good morning, officer," Marcus said, his voice level. "Can I help you with something?" Braden stopped 10 feet away. "I said step away from the bushes. Drop the weapon." Marcus looked at the small pruning shears in his hand. They were red-handled, blunt-nosed clippers. "These are gardening shears, son. I'm pruning the roses." "Drop it now." Braden's voice cracked slightly. He was escalating before he had even assessed the situation. Marcus sighed, a sound of disappointment rather than fear. He slowly bent his knees, keeping his hands clearly visible, and placed the shears on the ground. He stood back up, dusting his hands on his pants. "The tool is on the ground. Now may I ask why you are approaching me in this manner?" "We have reports of trespassing and vandalism in this lot. Let me see some ID." Marcus stood firm. He knew the law better than most lawyers. He had spent years studying the Constitution he had sworn to defend. "Officer, this is the East Side Community Garden. It is public property. I am the manager of this garden. I am not trespassing, and as you can see, I am gardening, not vandalizing. Unless you have a reasonable, articulable suspicion that I have committed a crime, I am not required to show you my identification." Officer Braden didn't like that answer. In his 3 years on the force, he had grown used to immediate compliance, especially in this neighborhood. When he gave an order, people jumped. They didn't quote the law. They didn't stand with their chest out and their chin up. "I'm conducting an investigation," Braden snapped, stepping closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "And you're matching the description of a suspect." "What description?" Marcus asked calmly. "Male, black, in the lot. That's you." "That is a description of half the men in this zip code, officer. That is not specific enough to justify a detainment under Terry versus Ohio. You are fishing." Braden's face flushed a deep crimson. The mention of case law seemed to trigger something in him, a defensive mechanism for a man who knew he was out of his depth but refused to admit it. He felt his authority slipping away, eroded by the calm confidence of the older man in the straw hat. He needed to reassert control. He needed to win. "I'm not going to argue with you," Braden said, his hand moving to unclip the retention strap on his holster. "You are obstructing an investigation. Now give me your ID or you're going in." Marcus looked the young man in the eye. He saw the fear behind the aggression. He saw the dangerous combination of insecurity and power. "I am not obstructing. I am asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. I am a retired field-grade officer of the United States Marine Corps. I have lived in this house across the street for 22 years. I suggest you call your supervisor before you make a mistake that will end your career." It was the supervisor comment that did it. Braden's ego couldn't take the hit. He perceived the advice as a threat, the wisdom as an insult. "Turn around," Braden shouted, reaching for his radio with one hand and grabbing Marcus's arm with the other. "You're under arrest." "For what crime?" Marcus asked, not pulling away but stiffening his arm, engaging the core strength that had once carried rucksacks across deserts. "Interfering. Resisting. Turn around." The physical contact changed the dynamic instantly. Marcus didn't strike back. He knew that would be a death sentence, but he didn't go limp either. He maintained his command presence, a term used in the military for the aura of authority that keeps order in chaos. "I am not resisting," Marcus repeated loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "I am asking for the lawful basis of this arrest." Braden didn't have a lawful basis. He had frustration. He had a bruised ego. He spun Marcus around, utilizing a leverage technique he had learned in the academy, but doing it with sloppy, angry form. He kicked Marcus's legs apart. "Get on the ground." This was the moment where the training should have kicked in. The officer should have realized he was dealing with a compliant, non-violent senior citizen, but the red mist of anger had descended. When Marcus explained about his bad knees about the metal pins, Braden took it as defiance. Braden swept Marcus's legs. It wasn't a controlled takedown. It was a tackle. Marcus, despite his strength, couldn't defy physics. His 64-year-old body hit the hard-packed earth with a bone-jarring thud. His hat flew off. His left knee, the one with the pins, slammed into a wooden planter box. Pain, white-hot and blinding, shot up his leg. He grunted, biting his tongue to keep from shouting. Braden was on top of him instantly, knee driving into Marcus's spine, pressing the breath out of his lungs. "Stop resisting! Stop resisting!" Braden yelled for the benefit of the witnesses, though Marcus was lying perfectly still, face in the dirt. "Officer!" A woman's voice shrieked. It was Mrs. Higgins, a 70-year-old neighbor who lived 2 doors down. She was standing on the sidewalk, her smartphone held high with shaking hands. "That is Colonel Thorne. What are you doing? He's a veteran. He lives here." "Back up!" Braden yelled at her, pointing a finger while keeping his weight on Marcus. "Back up, or you're next." "I am recording this," Mrs. Higgins shouted back, her voice trembling with rage. "I am recording everything. You are hurting him." Marcus, his face pressed against the mulch, closed his eyes. He focused on his breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Don't give him a reason. Don't move. He felt his arm being wrenched behind his back, pushed past the point of natural rotation. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. Click. Click. Tight. Too tight. "You are injuring a disabled veteran," Marcus said, his voice muffled by the dirt but still eerily calm. "My left knee is surgically reconstructed. You are causing permanent damage." "Shut up!" Braden panted, hauling Marcus to his feet by the handcuffs, a maneuver that sent fresh waves of agony through Marcus's shoulders. Braden dragged Marcus to the patrol car. Marcus limped heavily, unable to put weight on his left leg. The neighbors were shouting now. "Shame on you! That's the colonel! We're calling the police on you!" Braden ignored them, shoving Marcus into the back of the cruiser. The plastic seat was cramped. Marcus had to twist his body to accommodate his injured leg. The door slammed shut, sealing him in the stale air of the cage. Braden got into the front seat. He was sweating profusely, his chest heaving. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring out the windshield. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He had heard the lady shouting, "Colonel!" He had seen the way the man didn't panic, but he had gone too far to turn back. He put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving the gardening shears lying in the dirt and the peace roses swaying in the wind. The ride to the precinct was 10 minutes of suffocating silence. Braden didn't turn on the radio. He didn't look in the rearview mirror. He drove stiffly, his mind racing, trying to construct the narrative he would write in his report. Suspect was belligerent. Suspect refused lawful orders. Suspect assumed a fighting stance. He repeated the phrases in his head, trying to make them true. In the back seat, Marcus Thorne sat with his eyes forward. He was in excruciating pain. His knee felt like it was on fire. His shoulder was throbbing, but his mind was clear. He was already drafting his own document. He was memorizing the route, the time, the speed, the lack of communication. He was cataloging every violation of department policy. He wasn't just a victim. He was a tactician observing the enemy. When they pulled into the precinct, Sally Port, Braden hauled Marcus out. "Watch your head," Braden muttered, a belated and pathetic attempt at professionalism. Marcus didn't respond. He limped into the station, escorted by Braden's grip on his arm. They walked into the processing area. The room was busy. Officers were typing reports, booking other detainees. The desk sergeant was a man named Miller, a gray-haired veteran of the force who had been behind that desk for 15 years. He looked up as Braden approached with Marcus. Miller's eyes narrowed. He looked at Marcus's attire, the dirt-stained knees, the quality of the shirt. Then he looked at Marcus's face. Sergeant Miller paused. He recognized the bearing. He recognized the look in the eyes. "What do we have here, Braden?" Miller asked, his voice slow. Trespassing, resisting arrest, obstruction. Braden recited, placing Marcus's wallet and keys on the counter. Suspect refused to identify himself. Miller looked at Marcus. Sir, are you injured? You're limping. The officer swept my leg, Marcus said. I have a service-connected disability in that knee. I believe the hardware is damaged. Miller's face tightened. He reached for the wallet. He opened it. The first thing he saw wasn't the driver's license. It was the Department of Defense retired identification card. Rank Colonel, Branch USMC. Status indefinite. Miller stared at the card. Then he looked at the driver's license. Marcus Thorne. The address was indeed directly across from the vacant lot. Miller looked up at Braden. You arrested a colonel for gardening in his own neighborhood. He refused to ID Sarge. He was belligerent. Braden stammered, his confidence evaporating under Miller's glare. He was acting suspicious. Miller didn't say a word to Braden. He picked up the phone on his desk. He punched in a 4-digit extension. Lieutenant, you need to come down to booking, now. Yes, it's bad. Miller hung up. He walked around the desk. Uncuff him, Braden. But Sarge, he's... Uncuff him right now. Miller roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. The entire room went silent. Braden's hands shook as he reached for his key. He unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had cut into his skin. 2 minutes later, Lieutenant Kowalski burst through the doors. He took one look at Marcus standing there dirty and in pain, and his face drained of color. Kowalski had served in the First Gulf War. He knew Marcus Thorne, not personally but by reputation. Thorne was a legend in the local veteran community. Colonel Thorne, Kowalski said, walking straight past Braden. I don't even know what to say. Please come into my office. Let's get you a chair. Do you need a medic? I need a medic to document my injuries for the lawsuit, Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel dropping. And I want everything preserved. Body camera, dash camera, dispatch logs, the initial 911 call. I want the chain of custody initiated immediately. We will release you immediately, Colonel, Kowalski said, steering him towards a chair. We can drop all charges right now. This was a terrible misunderstanding. Marcus stopped. He turned to face the lieutenant and the terrified Officer Braden. No, Lieutenant. A misunderstanding is when you order the wrong lunch. This was an assault. This was a deprivation of civil rights under color of law. You will not drop the charges as a favor to me. I want the booking process completed. I want the record to show exactly what this officer did. I want his report filed, because if you drop it now, you'll try to say it never happened. Process me. Then I will bail out. And then I will see you in federal court. The processing took another hour. It was the most awkward hour in the history of the precinct. Officer Braden sat in the corner, stripped of his weapon, while Internal Affairs was called. Marcus remained stoic. He answered questions politely. He signed the forms. When he was finally released, his wife was waiting in the lobby, her face a mask of worry and fury. She had the bail money, but the lieutenant waived it, releasing him on his own recognizance. As Marcus walked out of the station, heavily favoring his right leg, he stopped at the front desk. Tell Officer Braden, Marcus said to Sergeant Miller, that he should have checked the roses. You don't tend peace roses with violence. The lawsuit was filed 4 days later. Thorne versus the City of San Diego et al. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a dissection. Marcus's lawyer, a former JAG officer, laid out the case with surgical precision. But the real bomb dropped when the video footage was released. Mrs. Higgins's cell phone video hit the internet on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, it had 4 million views. The image of a young white officer tackling a 64-year-old black man in a straw hat while the man calmly explained his medical condition was visceral. It was undeniable. The audio of the crunch when Marcus hit the ground made listeners wince. Then the body camera footage came out. It was even worse. It showed the entire interaction from Braden's perspective. It showed Marcus calmly pruning roses. It showed the immediate aggression from Braden. It showed Braden ignoring the clear answers. It showed the escalation was 100% one-sided. But the investigation revealed more. It wasn't just this stop. A review of Officer Braden's 3-year history showed a disturbing pattern. He stopped black men at a rate 4 times higher than his peers. He used force in non-compliant situations at a rate 5 times higher. He had 7 citizen complaints for rudeness and excessive force, all of which had been marked unsubstantiated by his previous supervisors. The city attorney took one look at the discovery file and practically threw up his hands. "We can't go to trial," he told the city council in a closed-door session. "We have a decorated war hero, a pillar of the community who was gardening on his own property. We have video. We have permanent medical damage to his knee requiring another surgery. If we put this in front of a jury, they will give him the city." The settlement negotiations were short. The city started at $500,000. Marcus's lawyer didn't even respond. They moved to $1 million. Marcus said no. He wasn't doing this for the money. He was doing it to make it hurt enough that they would change. The final number was $2.2 million. But Marcus had conditions. He demanded that the settlement be public, no non-disclosure agreement, disclosure. He demanded that Officer Braden be terminated and that the department report the termination to the state certification board so Braden could never work as a police officer in that state again. The police union fought it. They tried to argue that Braden had qualified immunity, that he had made a reasonable mistake of fact. But the video was too damning. The public outcry was deafening. Veterans groups protested outside the precinct. The mayor, facing an election, withdrew support for the officer. 6 months after the incident, Officer Kyle Braden was fired. 2 months later, his peace officer certification was revoked. He was 29 years old, and his law enforcement career was over a casualty of his own bias and arrogance. The city paid the $2.2 million check to Marcus Thorne on a Friday. On Monday, Marcus was back in the garden. He was walking with a cane, now the surgery on his knee having been successful but leaving him with a permanent limp. He didn't keep the money. He didn't buy a new car or a vacation home. Marcus established the Thorne Legal Defense Fund for Veterans, a non-profit dedicated to providing legal representation for veterans who were victims of police misconduct. He took $200,000 and endowed the community garden, ensuring it would have water tools and seeds for the next 50 years. He built a new gazebo in the center of the lot, a place for the elders to sit in the shade. The story of Marcus Thorne serves as a stark reminder of the fragile nature of liberty. It reminds us that a lifetime of service, a chest full of medals, and a calm demeanor are sometimes not enough to protect you from the bias of a man with a badge and a gun. It took a colonel to expose a bad cop. But what about the teenager who doesn't have the rank? What about the single mother who doesn't know the case law? Marcus Thorne fought back, not because he needed the money, but because he knew he was the only one who could win that fight. He stands in that garden today tending his roses. He waves at the patrol cars when they pass. And you better believe that every officer in that precinct slows down, waves back, and remembers exactly who is standing there. They remember that respect is earned, not demanded. And they remember that authority without wisdom is just tyranny. How would you have reacted if you were in Marcus's shoes? Do you think the $2.2 million settlement was enough punishment for the city, or should the officer have faced criminal charges? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe that we need to protect those who served us, share this story. It's a lesson we can't afford to forget. Until next time, stay safe and know your rights. The end.